Have you ever wondered why the Romans' African expansion stopped at Egypt and never pushed deeper into the continent, despite Africa's known vast riches in gold and other resources? It wasn't because they lacked the will or ambition, but because one powerful African queen stood in their way. This is the untold story of Queen Amanirenas, the one-eyed warrior who led the Kingdom of Kush into battle against the most powerful empire on earth, and won. What if I told you that long before Europe carved up Africa, there was a black kingdom so powerful it once ruled Egypt, and later stood its ground against Rome? Nestled along the Middle Nile in what is now northern Sudan, the Kingdom of Kush occupied a strategic position between Egypt and the African interior. This location transformed Kush into the continent's premier trade hub, connecting Mediterranean civilizations with sub-Saharan resources. Kush controlled trade routes that funneled gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animals north, while importing weapons, wine, and knowledge south. Every caravan that passed paid tribute, and Kush grew rich. The capital, Meroë, was no ordinary city. It thrived with iron smelting, agriculture, and art. Its steep royal pyramids pierced the desert skyline, testament to a civilization forging its own identity. Though inspired by Egyptian traditions, Kush built something uniquely African. They even created a writing system, Meroitic script, that remains one of history's great undeciphered mysteries. But perhaps what set Kush apart most was its leadership. Here, women ruled. The title Kandake, Latinized as Candace, wasn't ceremonial. These queens led armies, negotiated treaties, and shaped the fate of nations. They mastered the terrain, developed bold strategies, and stood as equals to kings. Temples at Jebel Barkal and the palaces of Meroë reflected a civilization steeped in both spiritual and political sophistication. This wasn't a minor kingdom, it was a superpower. In the 8th century BCE, Kushite kings even conquered Egypt, forming the 25th dynasty and ruling as pharaohs. After retreating south from Assyrian pressure, they rebuilt Meroë into a cultural and military powerhouse. Their independence wasn't luck. It came from controlling trade, defending natural barriers, and deploying elite archers feared across the ancient world. As Greek historian Strabo once noted, the Kushites were numerous and ready to defend their land. But in 30 BCE, everything changed. Rome conquered Egypt, and for the first time, the Kingdom of Kush shared a border with an empire known for swallowing civilizations whole. Rome thought Africa would fold like everything else. They were wrong. A queen was waiting. Why does an empire with everything still want more? For Rome, conquest wasn't greed. It was survival. By 30 BCE, Augustus Caesar had emerged from decades of civil war as Rome's first emperor. But peace was fragile. His power rested on expansion. New victories brought glory to his name, wealth to Rome's coffers, and employment for legions that might otherwise become restless. The empire needed a constant influx of slaves, gold, and resources to sustain its growing population and appetites. So when Rome conquered Egypt in 30 BCE, following the defeat of Antony and Cleopatra, Augustus didn't stop. He looked south, and there it was, Kush, a kingdom rich in everything Rome desired. Its gold mines rivaled Spain's famous deposits. It controlled access to ivory, exotic animals for Rome's arenas, and valuable trade routes reaching deep into Africa. More strategically, Kush stood as the last independent power on Rome's African frontier, a gap in Augustus's expanding map of imperial control. As Roman garrisons moved south, tensions rose. In Meroë, Queen Amanirenas and her husband, King Teretakas, watched Rome encroach. Diplomats arrived with subtle threats. Tribute was demanded. Border villages grew uneasy. Then disaster struck. King Teretakas died suddenly, leaving Amanirenas to face the Roman threat alone. But she didn't flinch. Already a co-ruler, Amanirenas now took full command as Kandake. She stood firm in a storm. While others urged caution, she made a fateful decision. She would strike first. In 25 BCE, as Roman generals focused on campaigns in Arabia, Queen Amanirenas prepared to launch an audacious invasion, a preemptive strike against the greatest empire on earth. The hunter would become the hunted. How does a regional power challenge the might of Rome when so many others had failed? Queen Amanirenas found the answer in timing, strategy, and unshakable courage. She struck when Rome was vulnerable. With General Aelius Gallus leading legions into Arabia, Egyptian defenses were stretched thin. Roman attention was elsewhere. Amanirenas saw her moment and took it. The Kushite military possessed unique advantages against Rome's legions. Their legendary archers, renowned throughout the ancient world, offered superior range and accuracy against heavily armored Romans. Their infantry wielded axes, pikes, and swords designed for versatility in combat. Most importantly, they knew the terrain, the deserts, hills, and river valleys between their kingdom and Roman Egypt. In 25 BCE, Kushite forces swept north with devastating effect. They overwhelmed frontier garrisons, capturing the strategic cities of Syene, modern Aswan, Elephantine, and Philae in rapid succession. Roman officials fled northward, spreading tales of the African queen's advance. In Syene, Amanirenas made her boldest move yet. A bronze statue of Emperor Augustus was seized, and its head was removed. That head was carried back to Meroë, not as loot, but as a message. It was buried beneath the steps of a temple so that every Kushite entering the temple would walk over the buried image of Rome's emperor, a physical embodiment of their refusal to bow to foreign rule. This ritual trampling reflected the kingdom's fierce independence, a value their queen would soon embody through personal sacrifice. But victory had its cost. During a fierce battle in this campaign, Amanirenas was struck in the face and lost her eye. Despite this grievous wound, she refused to retreat from leadership. The Greek historian Strabo later described her as a masculine sort of woman, blind in one eye. A description that, while meant to sound foreign to Roman sensibilities, inadvertently captured her extraordinary resilience. Rome retaliated in 23 BCE when Governor Gaius Petronius launched a counteroffensive with 10,000 troops. They retook border cities, pushed deep into Kushite territory, and sacked the holy city of Napata. But Amanirenas adapted her strategy. No longer relying on direct confrontation, her forces struck like shadows. They ambushed patrols, cut supply lines, and vanished before Rome could respond. It wasn't about holding land. It was about making occupation impossible. Despite battlefield successes, Romans found themselves controlling cities, but not the countryside. After 5 years of grueling conflict, both sides faced exhaustion and recognized the need for resolution. But who would dictate the terms? What kind of terms could a small African kingdom possibly secure from Rome, when empires like Carthage had been utterly destroyed? By 21 BCE, the strategic landscape had shifted drastically. Despite reclaiming border cities and pushing deep into Kushite territory, Roman forces were exhausted. Their supply lines stretched dangerously thin across unforgiving terrain, requiring heavily guarded caravans that drained imperial resources. Meanwhile, Queen Amanirenas kept the pressure on. Her guerrilla tactics, relentless raids, and her unshakable will turned Roman occupation into a nightmare. Augustus was stuck. What began as a routine expansion had become a costly, protracted conflict with no end in sight. Meanwhile, pressing matters demanded imperial attention. Germanic tribes threatened northern frontiers, requiring significant military commitment, while Augustus implemented domestic reforms to consolidate his rule. The African conflict had become an unwelcome distraction. Sensing the shift, Amanirenas made a masterstroke. She sent ambassadors to Samos, where Augustus was residing during his eastern tour. The journey itself was remarkable. Kushite diplomats traveled across the Mediterranean to meet the emperor as equals, not to beg, but to bargain. The ambassadors presented Augustus with golden arrows with the following message: "This gift is from the Kandake. If you want peace, this is a token of her warmth and friendship. If you want war, keep the arrows, because you are going to need them." Kush would not bow to anyone. The result shocked the ancient world. Rome agreed to withdraw from all occupied Kushite lands, drawing the new frontier at Meroë, creating a buffer zone to protect Kushite heartlands. They entered into the Treaty of Samos with the Kushite, but most remarkable was Rome's cancellation of tribute requirements. Augustus recognized Kushite independence and sovereignty, a concession Rome rarely granted. Where Rome typically demanded hefty tributes from defeated enemies, Kush remained fully independent, free to conduct trade and manage internal affairs without interference. Amanirenas' military resistance and diplomatic skill created conditions where peace became more valuable than conquest. The occupation had grown prohibitively expensive, and Augustus recognized that abandoning southern ambitions would free resources for more pressing concerns. When Amanirenas returned to Meroë, she arrived as a victorious leader who had secured her nation's future. The queen who had lost an eye in battle preserved her kingdom's independence against history's greatest empire. The Treaty of Samos established a stable frontier that would endure for centuries, allowing trade while respecting both powers' independence. More importantly, it demonstrated that Rome's expansion was not inevitable, that with the right leadership, even smaller kingdoms could maintain their freedom against imperial ambition. Amanirenas' victory secured Kushite independence for nearly 3 more centuries. The bronze head of Augustus, buried beneath temple steps in Meroë, remains as physical testimony to her defiance. Though her achievements equal those of history's celebrated rulers, her story rarely appears in traditional historical accounts. This pattern of omission extends to many African leaders, especially women, despite substantial archaeological evidence documenting their impact. The Hamadab Stela and Strabo's writings confirm her significance, yet mainstream history overlooks these monuments of resilience. Tell us what you think about Queen Amanirenas in the comments, and let us know which great African empire you would like us to uncover next. If you enjoyed this story, you know what to do. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another tale of Africa's magnificent past. This is Histories Africa, where the forgotten power of the continent lives again.